right, it's 6 o'clock. So welcome. We had a month off, and now we're back. We're going to be releasing very soon a schedule for next year. So you'll be able to have the schedule for the whole year and all the books. So people will have a little more time to read them. We've been asked for that. So we'll get that out before the end of the year. And today we're going to do it a little bit different. Thank you all for coming. We're going to try and do it more of a conversation. So everybody who wants to can get in on it. And so you all can hear from everybody else, not just me. I'll try to be a little less of a blowhard. There's a lot of amazing, amazing lawyers here. And I want you to be able to hear from everybody. So let's start by bringing Mel and Eric on. Mel has tried cases with Gerry Spence, and we're going to start talking about his closing when we get as the first one. And Eric, how you doing, Eric?
What's up, John? How you doing?
Good. I've tried cases with Eric. He's a phenomenal trial lawyer, so I'm curious to hear what he has to say about some things. Looks like Mel might be a little late. Usually we have the video run a little for it. So let's bring Mr. Bartimus on, who always has great ideas. And let me, usually this is when I say, Roland, explain how it's going to work technically. We're not going to do that today. I'm just going to tell you guys, raise your hand when you have something to say. And please do so. I want to get your thoughts on these things. So when you have something to say, raise your hand. Hey, how you doing, Jim? You're on mute. You're muted.
Hey.
There we go. There we go.
Hey, John. Hey, Eric.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. We always have tech problems in the courtroom too, so we got to be, but we got to be on our feet. All right, so let's get started. Let me ask you guys about something about Spence's. We'll start with an easy one. Obviously, you read his whole closing, and it's not filled with legal jargon. It's not filled with big words. Tell me, either you guys, what you think of that. How important is it to talk with simple non-legalese words? What do you accomplish when you talk like that? And was it hard for you to do that, or do you do it?
You want to start, Eric, or I can?
Yeah, Jim, go ahead.
Well, anybody and I had the good fortune of seeing Gerry a number of times at seminars, and his ability to connect. And he starts right out. He connects. As you know, he tries to make everybody part of the tribe, and he empowers them from the get-go. We're here to chat. It's just like chatting across the room. And although they can't answer back, you know that they're rhetorical questions that they are answering back. They are being involved. And he does it just so brilliantly from the very beginning. And talking about the mud springs and visuals that everybody can identify with. And yes, I try to do it as much as I can of making me part of them so that we can just chat.
Yeah, so have you been to trial lawyer college, Jim?
I have not. I know a lot of folks that have, and it's actually a regret of mine. I wish I had years and years ago, but I have not.
I haven't either, and we've got Eric on here so he can speak to that. But you started mentioning about he tries to build the tribe. So maybe, Eric, you can tell us a little bit more what that means. I'm with you, Jim. I've never been there, but I'm not, Mel's gonna laugh at this, but I'm afraid to go. So I don't think I'll ever be, I won't ever be there. But anyway, Eric, so tell us about that. Hey, Mel, thanks for coming.
Hey, good to see everybody. Sorry I'm a little late.
Quite a growth, buddy. Quite a growth.
Yeah. What's up, Mel?
I'm in San Diego. I'm out of Jackson Hole, Wyoming for a little surfing and working. So how you doing, Eric? Good to see you, my brother.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you. So,
hey, Johnny.
Yeah, so I did get to spend 3.5 weeks out at the ranch. Actually, Mel came out there, I think, during my last week. And that was a pretty incredible experience. And John, I would be afraid if I were you. But yeah, listen, you know, when Gerry's ability to just to communicate with people, and not just communicate with people like on a, you know, just like a one-on-one level, he like has such an eloquent way of speaking, you know, and I will never be that type of lawyer. I don't have it in me. I can't speak the way he speaks, and I'll never speak the way that Darrow, you know, speaks. And I'm just not like that. So I need to just talk to people normally when I'm in front of a jury. I can't, and really connect and, you know, let them know that I'm always trying to convey to everyone that I'm like, I'm a local guy. I'm here. Like, we all work in the same kind of area. We know the same streets, the same neighborhoods. That's the way I connect on that kind of, you know, not complicated legal jargon. Just, hey, listen, we're here. We're going to try this case. We're going to tell you the truth. And that was one thing that struck me that Gerry kept talking about, is that, you know, it's the case is about the truth. And what was the truth?
So Mel, I'm going to ask you in a minute to expound on that, like that using simple language and how that helps build the tribe. But let me just push Eric on one more thing, and Jim. So it's not there. There's a, you know, what's the danger in not using simple language, right? There's the benefits we're seeing, but if I walk over to the courthouse, not that they're trying cases right now, my single biggest criticism of any courtroom I walk into is they're talking like lawyers. Why is that bad?
Listen, I mean, how many jurors understand what prima facie means? I can't even say the word prima facie.
Right, it's that simple. They don't understand
wrong. It's prima facie.
Exactly. You know, you say, I don't even like saying voir dire. I just like to say jury selection, you know?
Yeah, so if you reread Gerry's, can I call him Gerry, Mel? I've never met him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. If you reread it, you can understand it. And, you know, we all think when you go get one of your closings, whatever notes you made for it, or if you have a transcript, read it and try to put yourselves in the position of a juror who didn't go to law school and doesn't know the case as well as you. And you might cry. I mean, you see it again and again. I see it. I do that for myself, because it's hard to talk. You have the curse of knowledge. It's hard to get rid of it. It's really remarkable. You can if you reread Gerry's closing again and again, every few months, it reminds you, it helps you learn how to talk simple. But anyway, all right, Mel, so go ahead, tell it. So Jim brought up that Gerry was trying to build the tribe with the way he used simple language. For those of us who don't know what that means, can you explain it?
You bet I can explain it. So I think it's interesting when you look at how he spent the first whole part of the closing argument talking about what they'd been through together. I've worn this carpet out walking up and down this aisle. I've worn this out 327 steps back and forth, and I've worn it out. I mean, he's using simple language so that he connects with everybody, and not in a kind of patriarchal or what's the word I'm looking for when you're talking down to somebody, when you're talking down to them, what's the word I'm looking for? What's that?
Condescending.
In a condescending way.
Yeah,
I'm not
isn't it better to use talking down? I mean, isn't that just the perfect example of, I mean, we understood you talking down. It's good.
Right, but and I was doing that on purpose. Condescending is the word I wanted to use, but that's what Gerry might do. That's the word I'm looking for. I'm looking for a word that it's talking down to somebody. And of course, I mean, some of it's, I don't say it's feigned, but some of it is he connects with a part of himself that's absolutely real, that connects with people that he's already reversed roles with. He's already reversed roles with these people from Oklahoma. You know, I'm not from Oklahoma, but I'm from a state where you think about the number of employees for Kerr McGee, 11,000 people at Kerr McGee. Heck, most of the towns in Wyoming don't have that many people. And then a really important thing about, let me talk about the tribe. He says the tribe is us. The tribe is us in this courtroom. The tribe is us. And by the way, they're not in the tribe. Kerr McGee doesn't even speak Okie. They don't even speak Okie. They don't speak any language. They speak languages all around the country. They're not part of this tribe. And so one of it's form the tribe, and two is show that the other side is not in the tribe.
Rich, hey, and so when you raise your hand, we're going to bring you on, and I'm sure Rich has something important to say. Let me just follow up one more thing with Mel. What about what's he doing with this weird thing about him and the jury, and they're going off together, and the judge is going to be there, and you remember at the beginning
Almost a wistful, it's almost a romantic, we're going to go to Sun City together. And I remember, and I had this vision of maybe we'd invite the defense lawyer, maybe we don't, I don't know, it depends. I mean, he's just kind of, he's waxing and waning, like almost poetic, almost wistful about their time is almost over, and I've kind of fallen in love with you, and you've kind of fallen in love with me, and we're in love, and and he's just, I don't know, it's kind of part of the rhythm of storytelling. But what he's doing is he's saying we're walking this journey together, and we're going to have this moment in our lives forever. This is monumental. It's going to be so important. We could take this little moment and we could all retire in Sun City with this little moment because it's so important, this part of ourselves. So in a way, he's highlighting the importance of the journey, and that we all really are get along so well we could retire together. I mean, it's this fanciful idea of the tribe that stays together. I think it's super interesting.
So yeah, it is. And if you reread this and reread it again, often you see how brilliant it is and how it works on so many levels. The importance, we're going to talk about that in a minute, about how he brings the importance to it. But I encourage all of you, if you want to learn more about the tribe, and by the way, Jim, Eric, Rich, just break in whenever you want. Don't feel like I have to call on you. I want to make this more, think of me as the blowhard. You got to interrupt. You got to stop this guy from talking.
John, usually when you talk and people listen, they learn something.
Yes. Way to go, JP.
But you should read this again. And if you make a note on things we talk about, the tribe, importance, and other things, whatever Rich is about to bring up, and you read it again for those things, you'll start to see this symphony that he built. I mean, I can't imagine that it's not some type of innate talent that he honed. If they teach that at Trial Lawyer College, I'll go. But
but John, you hit on a very important point, and both Rich and Eric will agree with, and so will JB, because he is himself. Gerry will tell you, don't be me, be you. And he's not just saying that. This idea of people who have secret sauce, and they use secret language and special things, and they do the same, then they get a sequence and frame. It really is true. Gerry talks like this. If he's going to order lunch, he might say, well, I've thought a lot about the chicken, but I'm wondering where the chickens live. Does it live the good life? Is it a free chicken, or is it a harnessed chicken in its own crap all day long? I think I'll have the ham, whatever it is. But Gerry talks like that. So if you emulate Gerry, you're not emulating, it's the wrong thing. You can look at it strategically on storytelling, on tribe building, on bringing people in, and all those good things that we can learn from. But you got to be you. It's like Eric said. Eric says, I can't be Gerry. I can't be Gerry either. I got to be me. And it's better when you're you.
So I have one recommendation about that, because it's not easy. For some reason, it's not easy to be ourselves in the courtroom. We end up playing a role, and the role is lawyer man or lawyer woman. And we talk in ways that no one can understand. So we have something that I encourage at our firm is, if someone uses a legal word in normal conversation, make fun of them, punch them, get physical. Because what starts to happen is when you start playing this game, you start to say, holy shit, we don't talk like human beings in this building. And we're going to go over to that building across the street and suddenly talk like human beings. We have to put law school aside and be ourselves in our life if we want to be like that in the courtroom. Anyway, I'm sorry, Rich. You raised your hand a while ago. Go ahead. And Kevin, welcome. But Rich, go ahead. What point were you going to make?
Yeah. So one of the things that I took away from this is, and Eric and Mel, obviously you guys know this, but one of the things that Spence talks about at the college that he teaches, yes, be yourself, but he also talks about this idea of a share. And it's by being vulnerable and sharing your fears. It's like a magnet, man. There's an example that I use when I've tried to explain this thing that they teach at the college to other people in my office. It's, for example, if I'm talking about, one of my kids at a party, right? I go up and I'm like, hey, I got this kid. He's super good looking. Everyone likes him. He's so charismatic. He's just outgoing. Okay, that's one version. The next is, I've got this son and he's got a learning disability, and I just worry for him all the time. He keeps me up at night. I just, I don't know what's going to happen with his future. Okay, stop, pause. Who do you like more? The dad that's it's the same kid, by the way, that's my kid, both of them. But who do you like more? It's by sharing your fears and your vulnerabilities and being just brutally honest about the real shit. It's like a magnet. And so to me, that was maybe my biggest takeaway. You want to form a tribe, you be real and show your warts and especially your fears. And so for many of us, I mean, look, guys like, Keith Mitnick and Mel Orchard and JB, you guys, I mean, I'm a worry motherfucker. I mean, like, I'm the guy that like has trouble sleeping because I'm so worried about the next day. I get up and I've learned from, this is a copy of the Spence closing, but my biggest takeaway was when I'm fearful and I'm scared to death, and a lot of guys aren't, but I am, because I'm so worried about all of this stuff, I tell them. And you can see that like on page 143, Gerry does it beautifully. He says, he's coming back after a recess. Now, he had already done this at the beginning of the closing. He'd already talked about his fears, but he comes back again after the recess and he does it again. And it's not relative to the case. It's not relative to the facts, but what he's talking about, he said, during the recess, I've wondered about whether there's enough in all of us to do what we have to do. I'm afraid. I'm afraid of two things. I'm afraid that you've been worn out. There may be not enough left in you to hear, even if you try. I know you will try, but I know you're exhausted. Because I guarantee you, how many of us have been there? Oh, goddamn, they're sleeping. Oh, man, I'm worried that I'm boring them. I'm a bore. So he tells them. And then he says, after that, he goes on. He said, and I've been afraid that there isn't enough left in me, that my mind isn't clear and sharp now, and I can't say the things quickly that I need to say, and yet it has to be done, and it has to be done well. Now, he doesn't ask for like forgiveness, or he doesn't try to spin that. He just throws it out there.
And earlier, and Rich earlier, and that's exactly right. And we've all, I know almost all of you. I don't know Kevin well, but I
Johnny,
know,
take a power sip there, Johnny. I saw that.
but
Margarita action.
the fact of the matter is, earlier he says, and I'm afraid that I'm going to stand in front of you and open my mouth and nothing's going to come out. How many times have we all worried about that, of standing there in front of him and maybe not only not have the words come out, but have the wrong words come out? And he's just
I've never felt that in my life.
In being, and you talked about it, Mel, being inclusive, all inclusive. And that's
right.
a real talent.
So if you want to learn more about the tribe, you probably got to, it's too complicated to say, contact Mel or Trowler or college.
Yeah.
Well, John,
what did you want to?
Me?
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for letting me join, and I find this fascinating, and I'm privileged to listen to you learned gentlemen and scholars, and thank you very much. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you saying that.
John and I went to law school together. We graduated at University of Miami in 1995. Now, one of my best friends is Greg Burge, who John knows finished #1, our valedictorian, and he lives in Georgia. And I see him a lot still, even though I'm in Miami. And, Johnny worked for Sheldon. My goodness. And Johnny was #2, by the way, if I'm not mistaken.
He is
number 3 or #2? I just made the top 50%.
I was #2, and that still pissed me off because I was #1 until my last semester, and then I.
Oh no, we're not going to listen to any of that kind of stuff. Yeah. Congratulations.
But anyway, listen, Kevin, I really appreciate that.
Thank you for letting me be here.
I encourage everyone, raise your hands. I wanted this to be a
so long ago. I was going to ask something, but it was so long ago, and then Richard, nice to meet you, went on to his diatribe. Tribe.
Yeah, so that's
and so I kind of lost in it, and then it all went circle back. So
yeah, so I'll do my best to try to avoid that, but I'm going to bring people on when they raise their hand, and yeah, we'll do our best. So all right. And that's
click me off the video if you want. I'm going to keep listening.
Bad if you get taken off the screen. If you want to come back, just raise your hand. But I don't want. things to get too small. So Roland's
got
going to
it.
take people off occasionally. And don't feel bad about that. You want to come back on, just raise your hand again. All right, Mel, go ahead.
All right, so here's something that Rich mentioned that's really, really important distinction. The share can't be about you for your purposes. The share can't be at some odd time, because we have this trial lawyers college where we learn it's really okay to be honest about how you're feelings, but not everybody needs your honesty all the time. And in fact, it may not be relevant, right? It may not be relevant that you're afraid of a certain portion. What he's doing is he's in role reversal, reflecting what the jury might be feeling and finding an honest thing about him that he shares. The share is about opening them up. It's not even about him opening up. It's about, by doing so, he opens them up, and it's a time when it's relevant, because a share of something that you feel honestly may be total pandering. So that's the difference. Am I going to pander by telling them something that I learned at the trial lawyers college? I'm really scared up here. You better not say it unless you're actually scared. Because if you're
All right,
lying,
so Mel, let me ask a question. So to JB's point, he had talked about his fears, and I when I was at the college, I was lucky enough to have Gerry there and ask some of these questions, and we talked about this. And I struggle with this because at the beginning, as JB said, he talks about, I'm scared that, I'm afraid that I'm going to come up here in the biggest case of my life. I'm not going to be able to say anything. I'm going to freeze up. So how does that, I want to hear your comments on how that sort of works in with this notion that it's got to be relevant to the jury, because they're not the ones having to stand up and speak. So how is that relevant?
well, but think about this thing when he says when he says this, it's at a time when he's going through the journey together. And I'm sure a lot of those jurors, realizing they were in this case with these incredibly complex scientific issues, were not worthy. And I'll bet they said to themselves, what am I doing in this case? I'm not smart enough to be here. This is super important. Nobody's ever brought a case like this. The nuclear industry, this is really a big deal. And so what he's doing is reflecting some of those feelings, and also showing vulnerability does make people want to help you, right? It's got to be relevant. It's got to be in role reversal. But when you show people that you're vulnerable, it kind of gives them a reason to stand up and to help. So it's multifactorial, but I think it's reflecting something that they may be feeling.
So let me follow up with a few things on that. First of all, vulnerability. We're going to talk about that with Darrow, but hold on a minute. Second, let's get into some of the more specific. There's three more things I want to talk about with Spence, and two of them are technical, and one of them is a brilliance that might be easy to miss. And I want to make sure no one misses it. It's one of the reasons why you should reread this closing again and again. And I see in one of the chats, it's easy to miss the brilliance of Spence's closing as a closing, right? Obviously, he went to trial. He won the trial, I'm guessing. I have no knowledge of what happened at trial. But I want to make it clear. He won the closing, right? This was a brilliant closing. So we want to get into the details of why. So the three things we're still going to talk about are how he made the jury feel it was an important trial, the way he asked for more than he wanted and then got what he wanted, and then the who brought the lion to our town, which still, every time I think about it, it gives me chills. But so that I don't do to Aaron what I've been doing so far to everybody, Aaron, go ahead, tell us what you were thinking.
Hi, John. 2 days in a row, huh?
Yeah.
You've been stuck with me. So I just want to say, you guys are talking about being your authentic selves and, bringing that out. And the thing is I've done a lot of research and things like that for the women's side, right? So sorry, men, but we always get a really bad rap because we're emotional. And I am especially, and I wear that on my sleeve. And so it sometimes can be the difference between the jury looking at me like, oh, she's just, crying because she's trying to manipulate me, versus that's my authentic self. So most of the time when I have my boy Dyer, I have to start at the beginning and say, look, I have 4 daughters. I have seen Cinderella 1,000,000 times. But every time that she walks down those stairs and says, but your grace, I have the other slipper, I cry every time. You know, it doesn't matter how many times I've seen it, I do it every time. And so I said, and I have to ask them every single time, I guarantee you during this trial, I'm going to get choked up. I'm going to get emotional and I'm going to cry, probably at a very awkward time for everybody, you know? And so I have to ask them specifically, will you please not hold that against my client that they hired a crybaby that they didn't realize when they'd hired me, you know?
All right.
And that's something that, like, I think is something that we have to address as women, that men don't have to, because it seems sincere. When a man cries, it's automatically sincere.
Right. I agree with that. And I use it. So Mel's raising his hand, but so I'm going to let him talk. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off all the men. Don't worry, I'm going to bring you back. But we have some great women trial lawyers on here that I'd like to hear their response, which would be more valuable than mine. But no, Mel, I want you to say what you were going to say, because there's a value in the authentic. You've studied this authenticity. Tell us what you.
Yes, no, Aaron, it's so beautiful. I mean, I sometimes wonder if I've gone full circle. I've taught so much now at the Trial Lawyers College. When I hear somebody like that, when I hear you begin to talk about the fear of, I'm going to be emotional. I'm overly emotional. I cry way too much. My family teases me. But when we start with actually talking about what the fear is in a real way, it's powerful. But when you frame it for the jury the way that you do, in a way you're saying, the way you said it to us, and maybe that's not the way you do it, but you're saying, I'm afraid of you because you're going to judge me for something that I can't control. And what's that? That's an indictment of them. And so instead of indicting them, maybe the way you first described it, hey, I'm really emotional and I am self-critical because I feel like sometimes I'm too emotional. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm the right emotional. I don't know. But there's going to be a time in here where I may just get choked up. It's the weirdest thing to me. And it makes me unsettled because I don't know when it's going to happen. Anybody else have that kind of thing going on with it? What I'm saying is, instead of saying, and so will you please not judge me when I do it? That last piece, I would just let them have it. Because
Mel,
your honest share is it.
That's something that I've struggled with, is what to say after the share. And here's what I thought was awesome about Gerry. He just freaking said it.
Yeah.
He didn't ask for, will you not judge me? He didn't say,
right.
Can we hold it against me? He just said, look, here's it. This is it.
And what do you see is I trust you so much, I'm not going to condition your response. The lawyer wants to condition the response. If you really trust them, give it to them and trust them with the worst, with the, whatever it is, in the most real way you can say it. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I thought the first part of what you shared was absolutely beautiful, Aaron, and I would just cut it off and let them have it. I'd even cry if you were crying.
Right at that
Listen,
moment.
I'm crying now thinking about me crying. I don't know what's happening.
So Erin's given us a problem, but she's also given us a solution. And then Mel and Rich have given a possible tweak to it. Erin, I'd like to hear your thoughts on their tweak, but let me take them off. And I should say, guys, if you don't want to be on camera, turn off your camera and don't raise your hand. But now I'm going to call on Julie and Courtney. I think they don't have their hands raised, but I'd really like to get some of their thoughts on. Here's Julie, and just we're gonna take some of you guys off just so we don't have too many tiny pictures, but we're gonna bring you back. There's Julie. Okay, your camera's on. All right, so go ahead. Any thoughts on that? And actually, let's hear Erin. Erin, why don't you tell us what you think of Rich and Mel's advice, and then Julie. That'll give Julie and Courtney a little more time to think about what they're going to say.
No, I think that they are right. I do want to condition the answer, and that's why I'm doing it. And Gerry just saying it and leaving it out there and making it vulnerable. I think that is the true vulnerability. Is like, here's what I'm afraid of. And just pointing it out and not asking them to forgive. for it.
All right. Well, so Julie's right. I know she's right near me, 30, 40 miles away, and amazing trial lawyer. And I've actually seen her. Courtney has tried a lot of cases, but I've never seen her. But I trust both of what they have to say. So I'd love to hear from both of you guys.
So I am the anti-tribe, and Mel will tell you I've done education with him, and touchy-feely gives me the heebie-jeebies. But that being said, I was blown away by Spence's close, and I was so glad that I took the time to read it carefully. And John, thank you for making us read it. But what really got me going, Aaron, is you. So my family makes fun of me day in and day out. I see commercials on TV, my eyes well up with tears. I mean, I'm older than I'm about to say how old. I'm not going to say it, but I cry at everything. And I have never been through a trial where it wasn't right there. I won't try a case in a coat that doesn't have two pockets in the front. One is always full of M&Ms and one is always full of Kleenex. And it's the stupidest thing, but I'm very, very careful about it. So Aaron, I feel you with the crying, but it is something you have to, I don't address it up front. I don't think that I can stand in front of a jury and on voir dire and say, look, I am very likely to cry, because if I manage to hold it together and I don't, then I look like I didn't really, I didn't really care about the case, which is the exact opposite. So, what I would have to say is I'm about to try a case to a federal judge in Arkansas. We're going to try it this summer. And I'm really excited about it because there's not going to be a jury. And it's the first, I've tried non-jury trials before, but not a huge federal trial. It's a Federal Tort Claims Act case with a really catastrophically brain damaged little boy. And the last time I talked to my neuropsych, I was bawling because the kid looks pretty good, but apparently down the road, he's going to be horribly damaged as his brain develops. And it just broke my heart because, like all of us, I've been in his home, I've spent time with him, I've spent time with his family, I know what matters. And those are the things that really make you stop and think. We are privileged to represent people who really need our help. And if we're trying their cases, their future and their lives are on the line. And the pressure is so high and the stakes are so high that I've always been very big on making my voir dire, my openings and my closings about the client. But I think that if we're going to have any special vulnerability as women, we have to let the jury see that and see that we're just different from the beginning. And I've been very privileged, when I've tried cases, and John, you can't appreciate this, but I bet Courtney can, and I bet Aaron can. When I've tried cases, there's usually a big fat bully on the other side. And there's something to be said for being the victim of a bully. They want to help you. The jury wants to help you, and you want to help your client. And if it's so clear in your gut, and it's so clear on your face, and it's so clear in your reaction that you really care about your client, you really believe in your case, I think the jury is going to help you. And I think there's a benefit to being a woman and having it look like you're getting beat up by a big, mean man. And, frankly, I'll take advantage of that all day long.
Thank you, Julie. Stay on if you would. Let's hear what Courtney has to say, and then maybe all you guys will have additional comments.
Okay, John, you'll be happy with my commentary because I think I'm going to have to be the devil's advocate here. So we'll get a little bit of a debate. I don't like conflict, but disagreement. That's right. I am very cuddly in my personal everyday life. I have a lot of feelings. I also cry in commercials. I cry in movies. Just any opportunity to have a feeling, I have a feeling about something. But I turn that off for court. So I want to circle back to a comment that Rich made earlier about how do we learn how to be our authentic selves in trial. And for the most part, I think that I am my authentic self. I do definitely have a trial Courtney that's different than, even work Courtney. I would hug my clients. I hug my coworkers, but I just, that's not something that I would do during trial. I absolutely would never, ever, under any circumstances, cry during trial. So Aaron and Julie, maybe you all are a little bit more in tune with your own personalities than I am. My concern is that crying would be expected because I'm a woman. I'm also 5 feet tall. I don't know if y'all are maybe taller than I am. And I'm probably about 10 years older than what most people predict me to be. And I've gone to CLEs and I've talked with attorneys one-on-one, and I've been through coaching, and I think Rich and I have actually had this discussion where it's just kind of like, all right, girl, why don't you just let it out? And I don't know. I think it would be too predictable, and I think it would come off as disingenuous if me, as the small young woman attorney, is crying in the middle of trial.
I'm speaking for Mel now, and when he comes back on, he can disagree with me, but everyone's got to be themselves in the courtroom. I mean, I think we can all agree on that, right? But Aaron does cry. You know what I mean? It's so the question is, and I've choked up in trials, and like she says, the jury loves me for it. She's got a problem that when she is herself, is there anything technically that you can advise her that might take away her fear and I think she's right. I think that's a legitimate fear that many jurors are going to view her differently than me choking up. And by the way, we've now got a lot of hands, and I apologize. I'm trying to get everyone on, but I can't always do it. So let's step back. Julie, Courtney, she does. That's who she is in the courtroom. She can't be somebody else. So any advice?
I don't think she needs advice. I mean, I think that it's brave of Erin that if she is choked up and emotional in court, that she's able to let that out and be herself. I don't do it because I think it would hurt my case. I think it would hurt me. I think it would hurt my reputation, but she's found a way to do that in her cases and make that work for her. And I think that's awesome.
So I think it's okay. Erin, in all honesty, I've done it. I just haven't previewed it. And I think that, and I am sure that you're the same. If you've got to do battle, you're going to do battle, and you're going to be tough as nails, and you're going to cross-examine someone, and you're going to rip them up, and you're going to do what's got to be done. And I think that does exactly what John is talking about, and what Mel, God bless him, he wants from all of us, is that vulnerability. That's who you are. But we do need to just be careful about it. I don't think you need advice. I just think that you need to, own it. I like I said, I cry at commercials. You see a bride at a hotel. If I'm at a conference and there's a bride walking around the Disney World Hotel, I start bawling and mascaras everywhere. I get it. So just, go with it. But I think the balance is you've got to be a really solid, strong lawyer. And I know by reputation that you sure as heck are. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
And everyone, I think this is great advice for everyone, right? Because we all have things in the courtroom, whether it's gender or something else, where we're worried how the jury is gonna take it. Can we do that? And so this is great advice for everybody. Thank you, guys. All right, so I'm gonna take all you guys off. I'm gonna call back Mel and Eric, because they've prepared on Spence, and I wanna finish that. Julie, Courtney, Aaron, anyone, raise your hand. I'm going to bring Joseph in too, because he's had his hand up, but I'm going to move ahead because we need to get to Darrow. But there's 3 things I want to bring up while we're bringing those on. There's 2 technical points. I'll just make them without a conversation. And then we'll go on to the last one, which is very important here, and I want everyone's thoughts on it. The first thing is, and Mel brought this up earlier about importance. Spence in this closing many times did things to make the jury feel that this was an incredibly important case. And by the way, it was. But however important your case is, you can make it feel important, or you can make it not, you can not put any effort into it. So what did he do? He said, I have never had a more important trial. Let me just I just want to, sorry, guys. I just want to show you that, and we'll move quickly through this, but it's very important. He said, I'm standing here talking to you about the most important things I have ever said in my life. I have a sense that I have spent a lifetime, 50 years preparing somehow for 50 years. Wow. I'm 50 now. I haven't had a Silkwood trial. I spent a lifetime, 50 years to be exact, preparing somehow for this moment with you. And so I'm proud to be here. He does many, many other things. I just want to tell you, there's lots of things you can do to make the jury feel it's important, and you must. For example, make sure the room is crowded in opening and closing. Eric knows that on his tobacco trials. You have many people in your office. You have friends, family. That courtroom better be packed when you're closing. Make sure the judge gives an instruction on news media, even if there is no news media, and do things like he did so the jury feels it's important, because it is, at least to your client. And so you need to make sure they feel it's important. Those are some ways. One last quick technical thing before we get to a really important point. If you notice, he got his 10 million. I don't know if you know I read the closing. I didn't read the commentary. I can't remember if they mentioned that he won. And I think he got the exact punitives that he asked for, if I remember. But he says when he's talking about the punitives, he's talking about something in the case on the training the defendant did. I talked a good bit about the training. I was satisfied with my $10 million request. He must have made it earlier, which the judge now says the sky's the limit. I was satisfied with the $10 million request until I heard about the training. So it's so brilliant because he's telling them, I really want more. He only got his 10 million, which is what he wanted, which is what he asked for, but they didn't have to compromise on it further. I really thought that was a brilliant technical way to get what you want without asking for more, which is what we normally do. All right, so let me ask, go ahead, Joe, and tell us your thoughts, and then we're going to move to a really important point, and then we're going to get to the most brilliant lawyer ever, Clarence Darrow. Oh, you're muted, Joe. There we go.
Am I unmuted? No,
Yeah.
okay.
Nope, now you're muted.
You muted yourself again.
Sorry about that. Well, it just goes to show, I was going to say, my first comment was I'm here mostly for the cocktails.
Okay. We'll get to that soon.
Having said that, my primary take was much like Rich said, as to how readily and how effective it was that he made himself so vulnerable before the jury. And I thought that was really excellent. But my secondary take in reading it, and I only know about this case in a sort of general sense, I thought he surely didn't win the case on the strength of his closing argument. And I'm wondering if there are people here who know the case more, who may know things he did during the course of the trial to set up his closing argument.
So I'm not going to let Mel answer that, although I'm sure he does. And the reason for that, Joe, is, and listen, I'll hook you guys up after, but because I want to focus on the closing, because we're going to run out of time, because that would take too long. But let me just tell you, I'm sure that trial was brilliant. This is a brilliant closing, and I'm going to disagree with you. I think you're wrong. First of all, he did a great job of summarizing what happened at that trial, which we forget is important, because in a long trial, people forget. They're about to go in the jury room. If they argue, you've got to arm your jurors with things to do, with things to say. He gave them memorable ways to remember his points so that they would remember them in the jury room. And then last, it's actually a great tie-in to the last thing that I want Eric, Mel, and Jim to explain the magic here, because I'm not quite sure I do, but I just get chills every time I see it. I want, before I ask them the question, everybody put yourselves in Gerry's position before this trial began, okay? Strict liability. How many people have tried strict liability cases? Don't raise your hand, because, well, you guys can, but I don't want to start adding people in. It's hard, right? What do you believe? I don't believe in strict liability, and I'm a plaintiff's lawyer. I don't believe in it. It is really hard to win a case on strict liability. In fact, I usually don't even bring the case, I just bring the negligence case and I cut it out of the jury instructions. It's that hard. Now look what he did. And Mel and Eric and Jim, you got to explain the magic here because I don't get it. I just get chills when I read it. But look what he says. And by the way, he didn't think of this the night before closing, right? He was clearly working on his closing and adjusting it, but this had been thought of long before. Some guy brought an old lion on his ground in old England, and he put it in a cage. Lions are dangerous. And through no negligence of his own, through no fault of his own, the lion got away. Nobody knew how. And the lion went out and he ate up some people. And they sued the man. And he said, but I did everything in my power. I had a good cage. I had a lock. I had a moat. Okay, I added the moat. I did everything that I could. I had security. I had trained people watching the lion. It's not my fault. Why should you punish him? Because you brought the lion to our town. So what did he do there? I know it's magic, but I can't quite understand it.
John, I'll for me, and that's the first time that I've read this closing argument, but it just simplified the concept to like its most basic form. I'm going to use exactly what he said for my next strict liability case. I have a dog bite case, and it's just like, listen, it's your dog. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's it. It just said there's nothing. This person could have done anything. It's dangerous, and if it hurts someone, it's your responsibility. And I can't, like I said, I don't know what the magic is other than him just boiling it down to something so basic that everybody can understand. And then even using just a lion, right? Everyone's up. How does this guy have a lion? And I don't know whether that's a real case or not from Old English, the common law. But I'm going to use it and I'll pretend like it's a real case. But I thought it was brilliant too.
John, it was brilliant. And think about even today, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. I mean, it gives them something in their mind, and he reverses and he reads the instruction. Recall, he read the instruction that the burden of proof goes to them. So what do they have to do? The only defense they have is they now have to blame her. And what we haven't talked about, and I thought was one of the most brilliant, emotional, he brought her back to trial. He played her at trial. And he ends up talking about what she would say to her brothers and sisters, not ladies and gentlemen of the jury, her brothers and sisters. If you don't think that's emotional, so he's flipped the burden of proof. It's back to them. The lion got out, you got to pay. And now he's telling about her. You think they're going to blame her? I don't care what the evidence would be. He brought her back, he put her in front of them, and he let her talk for herself with the tapes, which was brilliant. And then he talked for her. Hands down. I disagree, Joe. I think he won this case. No matter what the evidence was earlier, he won this case in closing argument.
Sorry, my lights just went out. Can somebody turn those lights back on?
You're all creepy looking. Was this Friday the 13th?
We got it auto turned on.
Am I on target here?
Oh yeah, no, I agree 100% with both what you and Eric said. And it's interesting on the analogy of the lion, if the lion gets away, Kerr McGee must pay, is that it's not when the lion got away that's the problem. It's when Kerr McGee brought the lion to the community. So when you go back in time in terms of when their liability starts, it starts the minute they bring this unbelievably dangerous hazardous substance here. And remember how dangerous it is? The managers don't even know it's dangerous. A tornado could take a pound of it and wipe out thousands and thousands of people. He talks about this community danger of how dangerous it is. So it's not when the plutonium got away or uranium got away. It's when they brought it here. And if they bring it here and it happens, doesn't matter. Nobody had to do anything wrong. The other interesting part is Rick Friedman's talked about this. We've all talked about this. He polarizes the case. He predicts the rebuttal. He starts to say, and if it gets away, they must pay. And their only defense and their burden is to blame her. So he's polarizing as much as he can the case to say their only defense is they've got to blame her. And that's just classic polarizing. Rick Friedman talks about it. He's got a great book on this. And it's good stuff.
All right, so we're gonna take a quick break. If you remember, we have a 4-minute break where we learn how to make a new cocktail. And I'm actually gonna have some espresso. And then we're gonna come back. A lot of these themes are gonna come right back. Rich and Julie and Courtney, get ready because I'm gonna call you right back when we start with Darrow. And anyone else, remember, raise your hands. But right now, let's have our drink makers raise their hands, or hopefully Roland knows who they are, and our bartender. 4 minutes, so don't go anywhere.
And everybody at Trial Top Shelf Book Club, once again, for having me here. I really appreciate it. Super excited to be teaching you guys a delicious brandy sour. This is the most technical and advanced cocktail that we've made yet. So get ready. We're gonna start with our lemon juice. All right, you guys ready? You got your lemon juice?
Yeah.
Ounce of lemon juice into the top smaller portion of our jigger right here. You see? To our jigger, our shaking tin. Excuse me. The next thing we're going to do is a ½ ounce of orange juice. To our cranberry juice. Some pretty dry, unsweetened cranberry juice. So if you do 2, just do a half. If you have some sweeter cranberry juice, maybe just do a quarter. Next, we are going to do a ½ ounce of our simple syrup. Sugar. Yeast. Or cognac, whatever it is you'd like.
How much of the brandy? Turned my back for a second.
Yeah, 2 whole ounces.
Thank you.
This is the difficult part. We are going to crack this egg and only get the egg white into this tin. I believe in you both. Crack it on the side of my tin. You see that? I'm going to open it. Let the egg white fall in. Please. Inside of the tin. And all that's left in the shell is the yolk. All right. So try to do that if you can. If it's easier for you to crack it, maybe into a bowl, crack it into a bowl, try to scoop the egg white out and throw it in the tin. But I think you guys got it. I believe in you. Egg white in the tin. We're going to throw just 1 ice cube in there. And we're going to shake this. Only 1 ice cube. And what we're going to do is we're going to whip shake. Emulsify the egg white. All right. If you guys are ready, go ahead. We're going to whip this around really hard. We're going to really shake it to the point where you shouldn't hear a cube inside of your tin any longer. All right. Shake it nice and hard. Shake it fast. And then you should hear nothing in a second. And once you open up your tin after that, you'll notice that it's nice, fluffy. So, you guys ready? You got it? There you go. Shake it up, shake it up, shake it up, shake it up. We're gonna throw a couple more cubes inside the tin, and then we're just gonna do a regular shake. All right. There you go, there you go, you got it.
Okay, I'm ready.
Once we're done with this, we're going to be ready to strain. So the first shake is to emulsify the egg white, get rid of all that salmonella. And then the second shake was to everything mixed together. Now we're going to throw a couple ice cubes in our cocktail glass. We're going to go ahead and strain this guy right over. Have some orange slices to go ahead and throw on top of your cocktail. I'm gonna go a little classic and show you guys something cool with some Angostura bitters and do a nice little strike.
Wow.
Taste.
Cheers.
Brandy sour. Everybody?
It's really good, although mine doesn't look like yours.
It's okay. The shaking an egg white is a very advanced technique that takes some time to perfect. So I'm sure you just try it a few more times and you'll get it down.
It's really good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you, Mac. Great job again. And thank you to our volunteers.
Thank you.
So I have to say, I was surprised. I thought this was not going to taste good when I saw what they were making, but it's actually tastes pretty good. I don't know what it's supposed to taste like, but mine ended up tasting good. All right. So thank you guys. We're going to bring back Rich, Julie, Courtney, and let's bring, I noticed Linda Judge Alley now is on, and I'd like to bring her in too, to see if she's got any comments on that. But let's, on what we're talking about with Darrow. But let's go ahead and get right into it while we're bringing them on. So Clarence Darrow, he was famous. He was a famous lawyer in his time. Most of us probably know who he is, but if you don't, he was certainly well known. 2,000 spectators fought in the hallway with the bailiff for seats. Shocking. I mean, they wanted to see it. But the thing is, oh, and there's one other thing that I didn't know till that, well, I've read this closing many times before, but in the book, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, he says that Darrow wept, spectators cried, and the jurors and the judge sobbed. Okay, so and let's be honest, he was guilty. He was guilty of a really horrible crime, and he was acquitted. And the jurors and the judge cried with him. So what I want to get into, I'm going to lead you through it, but let's just talk in general. I mean, was this some type of hypnosis or some magic trick? He was guilty. Any general comments before we dig into this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say there are certain people in this world like Gerry Spence, like Darrow, who are just, I will never be that level. I mean, it's almost like they're Mensa level genius communicators, and it's just innate. It's like Michael Jordan, right? Dunking a basketball. There is a special talent that certain people have. There's another guy who you may have heard of. He was a psychologist named Milton Erickson, and Erickson was a real leader in using hypnosis as part of psychotherapy. And Milton Erickson, I actually have read some of his books. I've heard some of his recordings. The guy does things with people, getting them into trance that it's just shocking. But it's all the same thing. There's this innate skill of communication and genius about how to do that. So I think part of it is that. I mean, having been able to meet and talk to Gerry Spence, it's mesmerizing. I mean, it's just to listen to him. He's now what, in his late 80s, and he just can so captivate by voice and communication. So I think, to answer that question, John, is a very long dribble by me, but yes, I think some of it is because it was Clarence Darrow.
So let me disagree with you, Rich, only for the sake of, we're here to learn, right? So what can we learn from him? Like, we'll never be him. We can't suddenly change our DNA. But secondly, there's two other reasons why I want to look at it from a different perspective. One is, one of us here might be as good or better than Darrow. How? What do you have to do, right? You can't just say one day, wake up and decide, I am going to be that skilled. All you can do is decide to put in the work, to put in the time, to develop the practice. And maybe one day you'll get there. But if you never try, you definitely won't. So let's not assume, none of us, and maybe Rich, you're way ahead of everyone else on this call. Don't give up. Right?
No, I'm not saying I'm not
And
saying
I
give
hope you
up.
don't get on trial for bribery and you have to go defend yourself.
Right. Oh my God. I mean, reading about some of this stuff, I mean, one of the most poignant things to come to me about through this whole thing is how much the practice of law has changed. Everything from the nature of this opening statement to Darrow was in the bribery and he was in it up to his neck, man. I mean, he knew he had one juror in his pocket.
Let's assume he was guilty for purposes of this. And
Yeah.
Julie, go ahead. But then I want to take you to specifics, right? Because there are specific things he did that we can do. And the last one being the hardest, but we can all do that. And I'm not gonna let you off the hook on the last one before we get there. But we can learn from the specific things he does. And if you ask me, buried in this closing, if you read it enough and closely enough, is the secret to winning your hardest cases. And so that's what I want to pull out of it. But Julie, go ahead.
First of all, I thought the golden rule was always the golden rule, but I guess it really wasn't, because this was the most golden rule closing I've ever read. It was fantastic. Yeah. I kept reading it and thinking I'd get thrown in jail. This is just so sanctionable. Judge Alley would throw me in jail and I couldn't even excuse myself for some of the stuff. Congratulations, Your Honor.
Julie, that's a great point. Let me just mention for everyone, the law has changed a lot on the specifics, especially in states like Florida. So you have to be careful with some of that. But so don't assume you can say it exactly the way they say it. Anyway, go ahead. Julie.
But let me just say, I thought that what was brilliant about Darrow in this closing was how he kept saying, maybe I did, maybe I am guilty, but all these other things, he was throwing so much crap against the wall and it was sticking. There was a bad prosecutor with a vendetta. They brought me in from another state. They didn't charge the people who actually did it, who admitted they did it. This was a big thing to just try and beat up labor. There was so much poop flying that I think enough of it stuck, and people believed that he was just persecuted as opposed to prosecuted. And I just thought it was brilliant. I couldn't do it, but I thought it was brilliant.
So let's take those one at a time. Okay, so I think there's three things, but I'm going to save the last in a different category. First one, so I don't think he was just throwing things for one reason. They were all the same thing. It was the same tune in a different melody. I don't know anything about it. Is that how you say that? It was he was saying the same thing slightly differently, and together it was a symphony. So and listen, that is such a critical lesson in our cases. It's so hard as the plaintiff. If it's not simple enough, we lose. It must be simplified too. But you brought the lion to our town. So he had if the glove doesn't fit, as Jim brought up, you must acquit. Forget about if you like the resonance of it, if you like the music of it, because if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit is a song. You might not like it. You might not talk like that. And so you might miss the brilliance of it, which is he spent the time to make the case that simple. And Darrow did the same thing, which is, this is a corrupt system. So every one of those things was the same song in a different way. This is a corrupt system. And actually, the glove was a similar defense. It's a powerful theme. This is a corrupt system. So first thing is simplify. The second thing that I want you to talk about is, there's no point in talking about that, because if you disagree with me, you're wrong, and I don't even want to hear you. But we all know you got to be simple. What he chose to simplify, to be simple of fact, was not just any truth. It was a higher truth, right? It wasn't a magic trick. What he was saying was, yes, but. And that's how jurors think in terms of justice, not the law. And so if you have a higher truth, there's lots of cases where we don't. In the workshop yesterday that Aaron and I were on, I can't remember whose case it was, but there was a case where it didn't seem, it was a decedent, and it wasn't a wrongful death case, but the guy had died after the case was filed, and then there was a lawyer as the personal representative, and the higher truth was, so what? Why are we here? What does this matter to any real human being? So you have to recognize when the higher truth is against you, and if you have one that you can use. So what I want to ask you guys about was, and hopefully you agree with me. If you don't, then please disagree. But if there's a higher truth here, that this is a corrupt system, and I shouldn't be convicted, do you agree that's what he was doing? And if so, what did he do? How did he do that?
Well, I think that if you know the history that was going on at the time, read the book The Jungle, about how workers were being treated. I mean, if they were on the railroads and they lost a leg between cars, they just threw them off the cars and into the ditch, and they died there. And I'm certain that there were more more workers than there were bosses or owners. And so I think he made it, I think people were aware because they had friends and family or themselves who went to jobs where they were treated horribly, paid less than living wages. And he made himself one of them. I think he said, I am you. I am lucky enough to be a person that's gotten to some authority, some kind of power, but inside I am you.
So wait, Linda, I want to finish, but I just want everyone to remember that, because we're going to come back to that at the very end. Linda said he made himself one of them. Okay. And I really, really, really want you guys at the end, we're getting close to it. There's something I really want to leave you with. So remember what Linda said. Anyway, go ahead, Linda.
So because of the way the world was, I mean, I know we look at the world now and it seems everybody's diametrically opposed, but there have been many times in history where we've been diametrically opposed. And I think this is one of those times, whether or not to establish unions. And the owners, the powerful, the rich and powerful were fighting as hard as they could to prevent that. And the poor people were afraid to gather together, but they knew they had to do something. And so I think that they were trying to hurt the guy who was trying to help them gain some power. And I think they took it personally.
Yeah, so if he lost, right, it was a serious blow to the labor movement. And, you know, it's not the labor movement that we think of. You know, there was no 40-hour week. There were no anti-labor child laws. And this was a jungle, right? And people were fighting for their lives. So it was a higher truth. Let me give you a couple of things, and then if whoever wants to comment on them, that he did. All of these in the service of this higher truth, which is that he bribed, yes, but conviction by this corrupt system would be unjust. And maybe it's not yes, but it's maybe, but, because the corrupt system throws everything into suspicion. Then the first thing is something Jim brought up with, and it's just amazing. I didn't realize how many similarities there would be, but people are bringing them up and I'm seeing them. I didn't see them even after reading them back to back. But Darrow says, I think Jim said, it might've been Rich when we were talking about Spence, that he made himself vulnerable and they wanted to help him. Well, he starts out very quickly and he says, I think this might be it's certainly within the first minute. I'm a stranger in a strange land, 2,000 miles from home and friends. I mean, that's suddenly you're like, okay, what he's doing is, all you guys, I think, have heard me talk about paint it pink, the way we talk in my firm, paint it pink, right? You can't just, an important point, you can't just say it. You have to say it in a way that it will be remembered. I don't want to get into the whole story behind paint it pink right now, but that now he's painting it pink. A stranger in a strange land, 2,000 miles from home and friend. You could ask me that in 3 years. What did Darrow say about a stranger? A stranger in a strange land, 2,000 miles from home and friend. It's so powerful. He's there alone. The corrupt system has isolated him. So there's the first one. I've got a few more, but anyone want to comment on that before we keep going?
I do have one comment. There's a lot of similarities to this. I thought about this, about he's trying to make it bigger than about this case. It's a bigger issue. It's a bigger badness. It's a bigger moral and ethical issue, right? And that's the essence of really what the Reptile was all about, right? That Rapai and David Ball and Keenan and all the rest of the guys that put that together. But what they found was that if you can make it about more, because there's usually something behind it, right? If a truck driver falls asleep at the wheel, the poor son of a gun was probably having to drive 12 hours a day for 3 weeks. And he was exhausted because the company didn't want to hire another. So that's, I think, a very commonality that, you know, our takeaway is, okay, we're not trying cases, or at least I'm not trying cases like this, right? Especially a criminal case with all these other issues. But in every one of our cases, not all, but in most of them, even a slip and fall case at the store, there's something more. There's a system that caused us to get here to where we are today. And if you could make the case about that, and I think Darrow's entire closing argument did that very, very well. It's not about me being accused of bribery, but it's about this bigger system, this bigger corporation, or this entire history of conduct that most of us can find in our regular cases.
So right. And when we do it, what can we learn from him on how to do it? So there's a difficult shift. If there's anything magic trick here, it's how does he admit to bribery without legally admitting it? Because, you know, if we admit in closing something, there may be legal ramifications to that. So how does he do it? And that's the brilliance of it. When if you go through and you tuck out a couple of paragraphs, I'm going to read you 2 right now. You can use the same method when you have a higher truth that you need to get the jury to focus on. So he says, what am I on trial for, gentlemen of the jury? You've been listening here for 3 months. What is it all about? So here's his chance to comment on what it's really about. If you don't know, then you're not as intelligent as I believe. I've thought about that a lot. That's risky. You're not as intelligent as I believe. I am not on trial for having sought to bribe a man named Lockwood. So instead of admitting or denying it, this is a brilliant way that you can use to shift the focus to something else. That is not what the real defense is. That is not what this trial is really about. No man is being tried on that charge. I'm on trial because I've been a lover of the poor, a friend of the oppressed, because I've stood by labor for all these years, right? So he gets a chance to say his higher truth. One more thing. And again, it's the same tune, Julie. He's playing the same tune. These men are interested in getting me. They have concocted all sorts of schemes for the sake of getting me. Notice, he's not defending the bribery. He's just saying they're out to get me, which is, in a way, it kind of could be a defense, but it's not. He can't argue the facts. He's on weak ground. So it lets him change to, do you suppose they care what laws I might have broken? They don't even care. That's not what this is about. I have committed one crime, which is like against the Holy Ghost, which can never be forgiven. I have stood for the weak and the poor. So, and just one more, because I just love this.
He's great, isn't he?
So great, isn't
I can't help myself.
I never ask sympathy of anybody. We should all live like this. And I'm not going to ask it of you. I can imagine him saying it like almost angry. I would rather go to the penitentiary than ask you for sympathy.
Ooh.
I have lived my life and I have fought my battles, not against the weak and the poor, but against power, against injustice, against oppression. I have asked no odds from them, and I never shall. Don't you want him to go out there and start fighting again?
Yes.
So go ahead.
But John, what he says, and he doesn't necessarily say it there, is he says, send me to jail so many times in this closing argument. There are so many places where he says, I would rather go to the penitentiary than this or than that or the other, because there's someone better than me coming behind me, someone who will do a better job, someone who's younger and smarter and works harder. And I thought that was brilliant, because he just looked so much like he had zero hubris, and he wouldn't prostrate himself before these corrupt, evil people demonstrating the corrupt system that was chasing him down because he tried to help oppress people. And I thought that was just a brilliant way to deal with it.
That's a great explanation. I have to admit, I was confused by it. I couldn't wrap my arms around it. It's not that I didn't like it, but I didn't understand what he was doing. But I think that's right, Julie. That makes sense to me.
Hey, Courtney, chime in.
Just listen to all of you all. Yeah, I mean, I think he kind of made himself a martyr without making it a woe is me closing, right? Like, I'm doing the right thing. I'm standing up for the poor. I could be standing up for you, or you could be in my position where you're standing up for what's right in the future, and then you're going to be here in the same spot that I'm in. And I agree with Julie that, you know, he recognizes he's not the only person who could potentially be in this position.
Right. I see Eric just joined. So wait, Eric, sorry, just one sec. Let me say one thing. If you want to raise your hand, if you've got something to say, raise it now, because I'm going to let people speak and then we're going to move and then we're going to conclude. I try to get it done at 15 after. It's okay that we run a little longer, but I don't want to run too late. So if you want to raise your hand, now's the time. Raise your hand, we'll bring you on. And then we're going to finish with, I think, a really important point that I really want to talk to you about. But Eric, let's just make sure. Courtney, anything else on that?
No, Eric, go ahead.
Sorry. So, you know, the only one thing that we haven't talked about, and I know we're focused on closing argument, but I think that something that really popped out at me was that the importance of jury selection. And, you know, to me, the jury who decided the outcome of this case, if they were on the other side, you know, if they were the owners of these companies or the, you know, of whatever it is, the steel mills in California, that he was going to lose that case. You know, this was the jury selection. I think they talked about it. It had to be like 2 months long or something. They had the right jurors for this case. And so, you know, listen, you can have every great argument in the world. And this was an incredible argument and everything we've talked about and his themes. I loved it all. But I really, really think if you had the wrong jury, he was dead in the water. He had his people, and he was, you know, in my mind, he was the person that was fighting on behalf of those people. So they were able to believe him and accept those arguments.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can't, like some other cases, there are some jurors you can't win with. All right, let me see if we got any other hands, and then let's just finish up. So look, there's one other thing I want to read to you, and it's how he ended. And remember, I've asked you, was this a magic trick? What was he up to? And I want you to remember what Linda said. He made himself one of them. This is how he ends it. If you should convict me, there will be people to applaud the act. But if in your judgment and your wisdom and your humanity, you believe me innocent, return a verdict of not guilty in this case, I know that from thousands and tens of thousands and yea, perhaps of, let me read it how he would have said it. And if in your judgment and your wisdom and your humanity, you believe me innocent and return a verdict of not guilty in this case, I know from thousands and tens of thousands, yea, perhaps of the weak and the poor and the, see, I fucked up the perhaps. The perhaps is on whether it's thousands or tens of thousands. That's the only perhaps. In fact, I'm going to take out the tens of thousands. If in your wisdom and your humanity, you believe me innocent and return a verdict of not guilty in this case, I know that from thousands of the weak and the poor and the helpless throughout the world will come thanks to this jury for saving my liberty and my name. And so there's a reason why that was so powerful and why it was a higher truth, because it was fucking true, right? This is you don't get to walk into trial on bribery and walk out with some great fucking words. He lived his life that way. And when I read it, the only thing I thought, and what I really wanted to tell you was, you know, I've got hopefully 2 decades left of my career. I want to spend the next 2 decades living my life so that one day somebody will say that about me. And we can all do that. We can choose right now, like, what do we want people to say about us when we're gone? You know, a lawyer is so powerful. We have such power. Just our clients, forget about the society in general, what you do for your clients. There was no trick. It was true. Justice was done when he was acquitted, despite the fact that it was a heinous crime that strikes at the heart of our justice system. So anyway, I decided I'm going to read that like every week. And I don't know, it moved me. And I'm really glad. I really thank you guys for the opportunity to lead this, because it's making me revisit a lot of this stuff and rededicate myself to certain ideals. And you guys want to say anything about that before we finish?
He was great, and we remember him. Thousands and thousands of people remember him. And he's worth remembering.
Oh, sorry, Judge.
He's worth remembering. He was a great guy. He was a hero of mine before I ever got anywhere close to law school. He was just great, and we should all try to help people that are less fortunate than we are and make a mark doing so, I think.
So do I have time for a 75-second story, John?
Sure.
My family is from Chicago originally. And back in the early 1900s, intermarriage was quite legal in Chicago, and it wasn't in other places. And I have an ancestor who was actually known to my parents' generation who was intermarried. It was an interracial marriage. And they moved out of Chicago and were prosecuted for interracial marriage before Loving, obviously, this is the early 1900s. And they were going to trial, and someone convinced Clarence Darrow to walk into the courtroom as jury selection was beginning. And there was, and this is, family lore, everything stopped. You could hear a pin drop in the courtroom, and the prosecutor stood up and dismissed the charges without so much as a, how do you do? At the end of it. And it is somewhere in the history books. There's a newspaper article about it. One of my uncles has. But that, my personal Clarence Darrow story. So I was particularly grateful to have a reason to read that closing this week. John, thank you.
That's great. Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Right?
We should
wackadoodles, in case anyone didn't know.
Maybe we should just mention this is not an excuse to commit any legal acts. You will get convicted.
That's right.
We should read Fall of the House of Zeus. If we don't, anybody who's interested in that was a probably politically motivated prosecution, but there probably was bribery there, and he's still in prison, I think. A great trial lawyer. Anyway, so thank you guys. It's great, and see you. I'll send out the whole schedule for next year, so you know the books in advance.
Hey, John, real quick before we part ways, so I'm not behind the eight ball. What is the next book, and when is our next book club?
Okay, so January falls so close to New Year's that we're going to skip January. So it's going to be February. And so if it's okay, give me till tomorrow to send out the whole list, because I haven't decided the order. It feels to me like the order might be important. I know the next few books that I want to do, but we got to read Devil in the Grove. I'll send it out. I promise you very shortly. And February will be the next book club.
Well, thanks for today. That was so much fun. And thanks everybody who was here tonight. It was great.
Yeah. And thanks to all the panelists and everyone who raised your hand. Thanks, guys.